I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a dish I didn't need to wash when Adam walked in. It wasn't planned. It wasn't impulsive. It was inevitable. His hand brushed mine, his lips barely touched mine, and in that moment my heart overruled every boundary my mind had built. We said nothing on the drive back. The house felt different that night. Not because anything had changed physically, but because we had. There was a charge in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. Hi and welcome back to Hearts Awakened. If you're new here, welcome to this family. Subscribe and hit on the bell notification for more beautiful and captivating stories. For my returning subscribers, thank you for stopping by. Now let's dive into the widest parts of this story. They say life gives you a second chance when you least expect it. For me, it came not with fanfare or celebration, but with the quiet click of a door and the scent of rain on a Tuesday afternoon. Adam came back home unexpectedly. I had just returned from a client meeting, drenched from an unexpected downpour in Portland, when I saw him standing in the entryway, duffel bag over one shoulder, hair longer than I remembered, and eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. "Hey, Maureen," he said softly, almost cautiously. "Adam," I replied, smiling, surprised by how my voice caught. "You're early." He nodded. "Got in a day sooner than I thought. Hope it's not a problem." "Of course not," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "This is still your home." I tried to keep my voice calm, composed, motherly, even though I wasn't his mother. I had married his father, Richard, when Adam was 19. By then, he was already in college and rarely home. Our relationship had always been polite, respectful, distant. We coexisted in the margins of one another's lives, never really overlapping. Until now. Richard was away on business as usual. He worked for a top law firm and traveled frequently, often gone for days, sometimes weeks. I had gotten used to it, used to quiet dinners alone, long nights with wine and silence, and conversations that began and ended in text messages. I'd learned how to fill the void with my work, my routines, and the curated order of our spacious home in Oregon's suburbs. Adam set his bag down and looked around. "The house looks better than ever. You've done something new with the walls." I chuckled. "A few changes here and there. You notice more than your father does." He smiled, and for a brief second, I caught a glimpse of something: maturity, confidence, a subtle charm that hadn't been there before. He wasn't the lanky college kid I remembered. He was 25 now. A man. Later that evening, over dinner, just the two of us, we talked. Not small talk, not surface chatter, but real conversation. He told me how the tech startup he worked for in New York folded after losing its funding. He admitted he was exhausted, unsure of what came next. There was vulnerability in his voice, but also resilience. "I just needed to hit reset," he said, swirling his fork in the pasta I'd made. "Coming back here felt like the only right thing." I nodded, listening closely. "You'll figure it out. You've always struck me as someone who bounces back." He tilted his head, considering that. "You never really knew me, did you?" The question caught me off guard. "No," I admitted. "Not really." He smiled again, a quiet, thoughtful smile. "Then maybe we both get to change that." The days that followed moved slowly. Richard called once, said he'd be staying an extra week in DC. Adam and I found a rhythm in his absence. Mornings began with coffee in the kitchen. He'd sleep in late and emerge in sweatpants, hair tousled, always offering to help with chores I never let him do. Afternoons, he'd sit at the breakfast nook with his laptop, searching for jobs, occasionally asking my opinion on resumes or cover letters. Evenings, we watched old movies together in the living room. First, I thought I was just being kind. After all, I was his stepmother, offering guidance, providing comfort. But there was something different in how we interacted now. Something unspoken. A shift. It showed in the way he looked at me. Steady, curious, occasionally intense. I caught myself straightening my hair before our movie nights, wearing earrings I hadn't touched in months. I'd laugh too hard at his jokes, linger too long beside him on the couch. These were small things, harmless until they weren't. I remember the moment that confirmed what I had been trying to deny. It was late. We were watching an old black and white film, and the power flickered from a mild thunderstorm outside. The room dimmed, lit only by the screen. I looked at him and said something. I don't remember what. But he laughed, low and easy. Then our eyes met. And for a second, we didn't look away. My heart fluttered, and I turned toward the screen, pretending I hadn't felt the air shift. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. But something had begun. And I wasn't sure I could stop it. Summer in Oregon has a way of stretching time. The days feel longer, the light softer, and the nights hum with a kind of stillness that makes everything feel possible and dangerous. It was during these quiet days that the lines between Adam and me began to blur. Richard remained absent, physically and emotionally. He called occasionally, short conversations laced with half-hearted apologies and vague promises. "I'll make it up to you," he said once, and I remember staring at my reflection in the hallway mirror, wondering when I had stopped believing him. Meanwhile, Adam and I continued to orbit closer. We fell into habits. Morning coffee became morning walks. He'd offer his arm when we crossed uneven pavement, and I'd smile at the simple chivalry. He started helping with dinner, slicing vegetables beside me, elbow brushing mine, and occasionally humming along to the old jazz station I always had playing. We weren't doing anything wrong. Not technically, but the energy was shifting. One evening, after dinner, we sat on the back porch as the sun dipped behind the evergreens. I brought out a bottle of wine. Adam took a sip, leaned back in the old wooden chair, and said, "It's strange, this feels more like home than it ever did before." I looked at him. "Why do you think that is?" "Maybe because someone finally sees me here." His words landed with weight. I set my glass down slowly. "Adam," I began, unsure of how to continue. But he didn't let me. "I know what you're thinking," he said gently. "That this is wrong. That I shouldn't say these things. But I see it, Maureen. I see how you look at me." I stood up abruptly, heart pounding. "You should go inside." He didn't argue. He simply rose, nodded, and walked past me into the house. That night I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every glance, every word. I had never once crossed a line in my marriage, no matter how neglected I'd felt. But this, whatever this was, had snuck up on me like a tide. Quiet. Relentless. The next day I tried to create distance. I kept busy with client projects, spent time in town, and avoided long conversations. But Adam didn't make it easy. Not out of disrespect, but because he was genuinely kind. He noticed things when I was tired, when I was sad. And he cared in ways that Richard hadn't for years. A week later we went for a hike. Just the two of us, as we had done once before. I thought the fresh air would clear my head, help me regain perspective. But somewhere between the winding trails and the tall pines, something broke. We stopped at a ridge with a stunning view of the valley. The sun filtered through the trees, casting golden lines on his face. "I'm trying to do the right thing," I said quietly, not even sure why I spoke the words aloud. He turned to me, serious now. "So am I." Then came the silence. Then the kiss. It wasn't planned. It wasn't impulsive. It was inevitable. His hand brushed mine, his lips barely touched mine. And in that moment, my heart overruled every boundary my mind had built. We said nothing on the drive back. The house felt different that night. Not because anything had changed physically, but because we had. There was a charge in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a dish I didn't need to wash, when Adam walked in. "We can't keep pretending," he said, his voice low, steady. I didn't look at him. "I know. We crossed the line." "Yes. But I don't regret it." I turned then, slowly meeting his eyes. And what I saw there wasn't lust or confusion. It was something else. Tenderness, respect, longing. "We'll hurt people," I whispered. "We already are." "Maybe," he said. "But don't we deserve something real, too?" I didn't have an answer. Only questions. Only fear. Only the sudden, terrifying realization that I was no longer in control of what I felt. What had started as something innocent, a shared home, casual conversations, the kindness of proximity, had become a gravitational pull I could no longer resist. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this story wouldn't end without consequences. I knew the storm would come. You cannot carry a secret this heavy without it eventually breaking something open, tearing apart the careful seams of a life built on expectations, vows, and appearances. After that kiss, everything changed, though we barely touched again. We became cautious, not just in action but in emotion. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was filled with meaning, with restraint, with a growing awareness that we were standing on the edge of something irreversible. Richard returned that Friday, 3 days earlier than expected. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner, when I heard the door open and his familiar voice call out, "Maureen, I'm home." I froze. Adam walked in a second later, meeting my eyes just for a moment, then kept walking, offering his father a brief nod. "Hey, Dad." Richard looked surprised. "Didn't expect you here this week."
Adam şuruk.
"Just staying a bit longer. Needed more time to figure things out." Dinner that night was quiet, strained. Richard talked about the firm, about a new promotion on the horizon, about how he might need to relocate temporarily. He didn't ask about me. He didn't ask about Adam. His world was shrinking inward, focused only on his success. Later, as we cleared the dishes, he made a comment that pierced the air like a knife. "You two seem close," he said with a hint of suspicion, eyes moving from me to Adam. I responded quickly, too quickly. "He's your son, Richard. Of course we're close." He didn't say more, but I could feel the shift. He was watching us now. The following morning, I found Richard sitting in the living room, holding Adam's phone. The screen was dark, but I knew what had happened. Adam had left it charging, carelessly unlocked. A single message, just one, was enough to ignite everything. "Last night shouldn't have happened. But I can't stop thinking about you." Richard looked up, his face unreadable. "Is there something you need to tell me, Maureen?" I opened my mouth, but the truth caught in my throat. "It's not what you think," I whispered. He stood. "Don't insult me." Then came the shouting, the accusations, the rage. Adam entered mid-argument and tried to take the blame, but Richard wouldn't hear it. "You think I'm a fool? You think I built this life so you could destroy it?" He shouted, pointing between us like we were strangers. That night, Richard left. No bags, no warnings. Just the roar of his tires disappearing down the street. I stood in the doorway, watching the darkness swallow him whole. Adam put a hand on my shoulder, but I pulled away. "This is my fault," I said quietly. "No," he replied. "It's not." But the damage was done. In the days that followed, Richard's lawyer contacted me. The divorce was swift, cold, and brutal. There was no negotiation, only withdrawal. He emptied the accounts he controlled, moved out of state, cut off contact. The scandal spread among friends and neighbors faster than I imagined. Whispers followed me at the grocery store. Clients stopped calling. I lost a project I'd been working on for 6 months. My name became a cautionary tale. And yet, amid the wreckage, Adam stayed. Not out of pity or guilt, but something deeper. He found an apartment in a nearby town, and invited me to see it. It was modest, clean, quiet. When I walked in, I noticed he'd hung one of my watercolor prints in the entryway. A small gesture, but it moved me. "Start over with me," he said. "Where no one knows us. Where we can just be." I wanted to say yes. I wanted to follow him into that unknown. But I also knew I couldn't make that choice out of desperation. "I need time," I told him honestly, "to know who I am without all this noise." He nodded. "I'll wait." And he did. 2 months later, I moved into a small cottage on the coast, far from everything that had defined me. I started painting again. I picked up new clients. I learned how to be alone without being lonely. And then one Saturday, Adam showed up, unannounced but not unwelcome. He brought coffee and fresh bread and that same steady smile. We sat on the porch, listening to the waves. "I'm still in love with you," he said. I looked at him and, for the first time in months, felt no shame. "I know," I said. I still am too. We knew it wouldn't be easy. It might never be accepted. But we were no longer running from it. Love, after all, doesn't always arrive on time or in the right form. Sometimes it slips in through the back door of your life and quietly rearranges everything. And if you're brave enough, you let it. If you find this story interesting, kindly subscribe and hit on notifications for more interesting stories.